Support us by subscribing, ring the notification bell, press all, and thumbs up. Thank you.
The most important thing that makes a team is the relationship and trust that they have with each other. So when you do events like you're doing right now, and it's hard, challenging events, that actually brings teams closer together, increases trust, increases relationship, and that means they're going to be more operationally capable on the battlefield. The most important thing about taking extreme ownership is that when you do that, you have a problem, you make a mistake. If you don't take ownership of that problem, if you don't take ownership of that mistake, what are you going to do to fix it? The answer is nothing. So if something goes wrong on my team and I point my fingers and blame other people, now no one's taking ownership of the problem. And then the problem's not going to get solved. So the most important thing about taking ownership is putting your ego in check, because it hurts your ego to take ownership when something goes wrong. Put your ego aside, take ownership of the mistake, take ownership of the problem, get a solution for that problem, implement that solution, and move forward. Well, when I went to the Battle of Ramadi, I had been in the Navy for about 15 years and spent that whole time in the SEAL teams. So I was luckily raised in that environment. So I was raised by other SEALs, people senior to me, senior NCOs, senior officers, junior NCOs that I was around, that brought me up in the environment that made me into who I am. I'm a product of my environment. My environment was the SEAL teams. My environment was the military. And so anything that I became, that's what I give all credit to, the folks that raised me in the SEAL teams. So when we got to Ramadi, the units on the ground were in an incredibly hard fight. And we went in and tried to provide as much support as we could to those units on the ground. One of the areas that was one of the worst areas inside Ramadi was the eastern part of Ramadi, which is what General Clark was in charge of with his battalion. And we augmented his battalion with some SEALs, and immediately we had an incredible relationship. We had an incredible relationship because they had an open mind to what we could bring to the table. There was no egos involved. We had an open mind into how we could best support them. We knew that they had more experience on that battlefield. We wanted to learn from what they had learned. We didn't want to have to relearn lessons that they had already been through. So our minds were opened, and what we wanted to do as a team is win. We wanted to win. We weren't worried about who was going to get credit. We weren't worried about who was going to look good. What we wanted to do was defeat the enemy. There was a determined enemy there. We wanted to help defeat them. And when I say we, I'm talking about all of us. Every unit that was there in the city of Ramadi was all working together. It was one incredible team, and it was an honor for us to play a small role in helping out in that situation. General Clark, I saw him immediately in situations, just even sitting in his tactical operations center when there's gunfights going on out in the city. He's maneuvering elements around the battlefield. His poise, his confidence, his humility, I was impressed from the word go. And then I just tried to give him all the support that we could with my SEALs. And again, it was a hard fight. We all bled together. We all buried our friends. And it's a brotherhood and a bond that will never be broken. So what people want is to have influence over their own future, is to have influence over their fate, have as much control over their fate as they can. So when I want someone to take ownership of what's going on in their world, you got to give them ownership. You got to let them get control. If I'm in charge of an operation, I'm going to let my subordinates do as much of the planning as I possibly can so they have ownership of the plan. If I'm talking to one of my kids, I don't say, hey, you need to do this, this, and this. I say, hey, here's what you're trying to achieve. Why don't you figure out how to get there? And let them come up with a plan. Let them figure out how they want to do it. Because when people have ownership of the plans, then they execute those plans with more tenacity because they truly believe in them, because they made them up. So that's what I try and do. As much as I talk about taking ownership, a lot of taking ownership is actually giving ownership to the people below you in the chain of command so that they can take ownership. They can move forward with a plan that they created, and that's when they're going to execute it with the highest level of success is when it's their plan. To me, this is a complete honor for me to be here. Again, going back to my relationship and admiration for your general, also for Colonel Womack, who we worked with in Ramadi as well. It's an honor for me to be able to be here to meet a bunch of heroes. As far as I'm concerned, every time I meet a soldier, and I've met hundreds and hundreds of soldiers since I've been here, every time I shake one of their hands, I know I'm shaking the hand of an American hero that's out there holding the line, protecting our great nation, and carrying on the proud tradition of this unit, which is a very proud tradition that it puts me in a state of awe to be walking through these halls and seeing the history behind the 25th ID.
And do you have a message?
Yes, when you go forward as a service member of the United States of America, you don't just represent your unit, you just don't represent yourself, you don't just represent your team, you represent the United States of America. So conduct yourself with pride, conduct yourself with professionalism in everything that you do, and carry forth the freedom and the beacon of freedom that we provide to the world.